Yeah, I like that too.
So I'm going to start the recording, and then we'll go through the consent and then all of the interview questions.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to start it on both. Okay, so for the sake of the recording, will you state your name and affiliation?
Sure. My name is Ali Mustafavi, and I'm an associate professor at Texas A&M in Civil Engineering Department.
Thanks. Is that your new associate, right?
This is official.
Thank you. Congrats. I heard that. I was like, oh, yep.
That's fresh. That's the first time I introduced myself as an associate professor, so it's on the record.
On the record, it felt very natural.
Thank you.
So you were invited to participate in a research study about disaster research perspectives on COVID-19 led by Liesl Ritchie. The protocols have been approved by the Institutional Review Board at Oklahoma State University as well as at the University of Kansas. Your participation is voluntary. There's no penalty for refusal, and you can withdraw your consent at any time without any penalty. If you do agree to participate in the study, we ask that you do this 1 hour interview with us now, and then also one subsequent interview within the next 12 months to follow up on any initial comments made today. There's no compensation for participating in the study, and unless you request otherwise, the information you give in the study, in this interview, will not be anonymous. So this means that your comments will be attributed to you, but we believe this involves risks similar to a researcher's daily activities. And then after we finish the interview, I'll send you the transcript once I have it so you can review it just to make sure that your comments came off the way that you wanted them to come off. So with that, do you agree to participate in the interview process?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. So then to start, would you please tell me a bit about your professional background?
Okay, so I'm a civil engineering faculty. My professional background involves my 2 years of practice back in my home country, Iran, in Tehran, in project management, and then after that, I've entered academia for my graduate program, master's, and then PhD in the U.S. I did my PhD at Purdue University between 2009 and 2013. And after that, I joined Florida International University in August of 2013 and was an assistant professor in the College of Engineering and Computing for 3 years. I moved to Texas A&M in August 2016 and has been a faculty with the Department of Civil Engineering since then, and I'm currently with the department as well.
Very nice, thanks. When and how did you get involved with research on disasters?
My first involvement with disaster research was when I joined Florida International University. My background, my dissertation research was more on infrastructure systems and management of infrastructure systems in a normal operation without disaster or crisis background. When I joined Florida International University, because of the context of the community, so Southeast Florida is a hurricane-prone area, flood-prone area, sea level rise issues. So that was my first involvement to extend my research focus on problems related to disasters and their impacts on infrastructure systems. And the main and basically it was kind of a tipping point event for me for involvement in disaster research was my research in the aftermath of the 2015 earthquake in Kathmandu, Nepal. So myself and two of my colleagues at FIU received a RAPID project from NSF and conducted a rapid study on the impacts of the earthquake on infrastructure in Nepal. and the interdependencies between the infrastructure systems in Nepal, which involved 3 visits to Kathmandu and surrounding areas after the earthquake between 2015 and 2016. Within 1 year, in the aftermath of the earthquake, included data collection, interviews with the organization, and that was kind of, I feel like that was kind of a defining moment. That after that, I started identifying myself as a disaster researcher.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna stay focused, but I'll quickly say I've got to look up those papers that you have after that rapid. It sounds really fascinating. Yeah. So, I mean, I know a little bit about your expertise, I guess, Ali, but would you consider, or how would you describe, like, your specific specialty area, or do you specialize in a certain type of disaster research?
Well, I would say, I specialize in the phenomena of interest in disaster context. So basically, I'm looking into interaction between human systems and infrastructure, and I'm adopting methods from data analytics and complex networks to better characterize, analyze, and model these interactions. But I'm employing these methods for evaluating these phenomena related to how humans and infrastructure interact across different types of disasters. So I have had experiences with earthquake in Nepal, flooding and hurricanes in Harvey, the more chronic disasters like sea level rise in Southeast Florida, and right now the pandemic.
Thanks. So, and again, you're the first person I've interviewed who I know some of their work and stuff. So I feel a little strange to ask some of these questions, but we'll go through. But you'll be able to say everything better than what I would have filled in for you, of course. But what was the focus of your research before COVID-19? Were you engaged in a particular study?
Right. So my primary research focus before COVID-19 was on flooding and Hurricane Harvey in the context of Hurricane Harvey. So since 2017, my primary focus has been on studying the different aspects of impacts of Hurricane Harvey through different grants and projects. Basically, studying the interdependencies between infrastructure systems during flooding, the modeling of cascading failures, understanding, organizational coordination networks, and the societal impacts of infrastructure disruptions. And this has been my primary focus since 2017. And then to some extent, we have also studied the wildfires in California, but not as extensive as Hurricane Harvey. So I would say the primary focus has been on Harvey.
Okay, so with the Harvey research, you mentioned different funding. Is there one particular project you had going, say, in mid-March, or maybe it was just several projects you had going on Hurricane Harvey at that time when the pandemic hit?
Yes, I had multiple projects ongoing then the pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm. And so how, if and how, I guess, did COVID-19 disrupt or divert your research on Hurricane Harvey?
I would say it led to some adjustments. So when the pandemic happened, as a disaster researcher, we identified research questions and phenomena that we thought that would be useful to analyze and investigate for immediate information for response and also for broader scientific contribution. So because of that, I had to adjust and make a little bit of adjustment in the assignments of my graduate students' focus. So I was lucky in some sense because right now my lab is a little bit top-heavy, so I have more third-year, fourth-year PhD students than first-year, second-year. It wasn't the case 4 years ago. I was very bottom-heavy. So now I'm top-heavy. So that helped a little bit because the students were more experienced, so they were able to adjust and contribute to some extent to the COVID investigation while maintaining their focus on Harvard. That was one thing. We did not experience disruption per se, but I think we have to reprioritize for certain time period. I would say between March to May. Because at the beginning, we were learning about, we had to identify data sources, collecting data, so we had some adjustment in terms of our focus. But then by May, we had found the balance in terms of, our student assignments, different projects. So we had some slowdown on the Harvey study to some extent between March and May, but we were able to recover that. And that another component that helped was that unfortunately for students, I had students, undergraduate researchers and master researchers who lost their internships, and they wanted to be active during summer, so they reached out to do research. So and thanks to NSF support for a rapid project, I was able to provide temporary research assistantship to those students to get involved in research, and that kind of helped with the extended scope of our research on both COVID and hurricane. And for more experienced PhD students to have additional involvement from master's students and undergraduate students to assist them with some data collection.
That's great. So with the Hurricane Harvey project, you don't think that the study objectives got compromised or in any way, y'all are still able to do the research that you wanted to do and that you were doing on the Hurricane Harvey project?
Yes, I don't think we didn't experience any disruptions. Of course, it provided some synergy. So, for example, we are currently looking into the intersection of hurricane and pandemic to evaluate the compound risks, etc. But those were kind of opportunities for synergy than disruptions or deviations from our focus.
Got it. Okay, thanks. So then you've kind of touched on this, but I'll ask it directly. What is the focus of your COVID-19 research?
The focus is primarily on how population activities and movements in interaction with built environment cities could contribute to the spread and impacts of COVID-19. So our focus has been primarily on the change in population activities and mobility, and then identifying early indicators that could suggest that certain population activities, for example, visits to certain hotspots in cities, could increase the risk, and also see the mobility changes. We've seen, because of the social distancing and shelter in place, we see mobility reduction in some areas, less reduction in some areas, and also we see differences across different socio-demographic groups. So our focus has been to study and reveal, the underlying patterns of population activity, that mobility that could contribute to the impacts of the pandemic.
So how do you expect or hope the findings of this research to be used?
I think, hopefully, the findings could be used in different ways. One is, I think we're hoping that, our focus has been on use of unconventional data sets, and we hope that this provides, insights about the potential of using unconventional data for disaster research in general, but also for surveillance of pandemic. So for example, right now the main kind of number that people focus on are number of cases or number of deaths, but those are lagging indicators. So we are hoping that we can identify some leading indicators based on, let's say, the extent of mobility in the city that could be used to inform policy. So hopefully we hope that we can come up with more data-driven methods for to inform policy, and for disaster research we can show the utility of some unconventional data sources for studying different disaster phenomena.
And are there any particular concepts or theories that are guiding your COVID-19 research?
That's a really good question. I think, as of now, I don't think there are any particular conceptual frameworks or theories. The focus has been mainly on, understanding the patterns of activities. But having said that, I think there are theories about mobility and patterns of activity. So I think after we are able to identify the differences in patterns of activity, we would be able to look at the existing theories that might be outside the context of COVID, but maybe other crises, and see how the theories about human mobility and movements apply in the context of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So as of now, we haven't adopted any theory or concept, but I can see that being done as we start seeing certain patterns in our data.
Have you studied mobility patterns in any of your previous research?
Yes. So for Harvey, we looked at the impacts of flooding on mobility patterns, the access of populations to critical facilities. So that was part of our Harvard study. That was kind of the motivation. So when we see a crisis in a city, there will be changing mobility patterns, not just during the crisis period, but also for a period after that. So that kind of motivated us to look into COVID-19. At the time in March, we had hoped that it's a kind of a 2-3 month event. Not this, who knows? Yeah, but it seems that it's evolving and its mobility patterns are evolving. So we are just seeing the patterns, and we haven't reached a point to say that okay, now the pandemic is contained. Let's go back and see how things were before, after, during the peak, during the second wave. So right now we are just seeing the study as we go, see the patterns as they emerge, until we are able to say, okay, this is the end point. Now, what we can learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What are the primary methods that you're using in your COVID-19 project?
There are two primary methods. One is network analysis. We use data to build network models in which we can, for example, determine the mobility patterns in a city using a network in which, let's say, nodes represent zip codes and links represent movements between zip codes, and then see how changes in the network could help us understand the changes in the mobility patterns. That's one aspect, and the other aspect is methodology is machine learning and deep learning. So since the data is extensive and it covers major metropolitan areas in the U.S., we are developing machine learning and deep learning models so that we can see how algorithms can learn the patterns in the data for predicting the future response of populations, and as a result of that, the spread of the disease.
How are you collecting your data, or where are you getting your data from?
So because of the pandemic, there are some technology companies like Facebook they had programs like Data for Good programs, and part of the Data for Good program was to provide aggregated, anonymized data for researchers to study, important societal challenges, including disasters. So Facebook had disaster maps, etc. So, and my group had partnerships with them before the pandemic, and then when it emerged, we built upon those partnerships to extend our data collection, and actually that helped a lot. But I know that after COVID, they became more receptive of researchers. I would say before COVID-19, I would say our team was among the very few teams from academia that were partnered with Facebook, Data for Good program. But now I think they have more than 100 or 150 partners, or even more, which is a great thing. So I think that's another thing that the data that used to be difficult to collect, the data providers became more willing to provide that to researchers, which was a good thing, and that provides an avenue, as I mentioned, to explore the use of unconventional data in disaster research.
With the data that you're getting through Facebook, is that are you analyzing posts or interpreting pictures?
Those are movements. Actually, they don't. The good thing is that it's mainly focusing on population movements and activities, and it's an aggregated and anonymized data. So basically, it shows that there is a tile here, and the tile is a relatively large area that there is no way that anybody could attribute the movements to any particular household or person. And so between this tile and this tile in the baseline period, which was, let's say, before pandemic, the change in the movements have been, let's say, 20%. And so help us with understanding the change in movement between different areas. So it's not on the content, it's more on the movement patterns for users who have their location services enabled. And again, it's aggregated and anonymized, so make it possible to analyze them without having to deal with any privacy concerns.
Is this type of data, is this similar to what you did with Hurricane Harvey? Have you used this type of data before?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we have. The difference is Facebook has learned, in collaboration with researchers and researchers, including ours, about the data processing. So, for example, the way they processed and provided data has evolved, and I can say that the data that they provide for COVID-19 research is more useful than what they provided in previous disaster. Actually, it was because of the partnerships that they had with researchers like ours and the feedback they received about the way they provided sometimes might not be useful, right? So, and then they were able to adjust it, and I think there are several research teams that I know that are using Facebook population movement data, for research on COVID-19.
Oh, cool. And then with the machine learning, the deep learning, and the network analysis, have you used all of those methods in previous research before?
Yes, yes.
What type of adjustments, if any, have you had to make to accommodate studying COVID-19 with any of these methods?
I think the adjustment was mainly in terms of the research team, as I mentioned earlier, to adjust and have researchers, PhD students who are employing those methods in the context of, let's say, Harvey, to, for example, the same student who was leading our work on using Facebook, crisis data for Harvey, basically led the activity for the COVID study. So the adjustment was the assignments of students, and then and at the same time, I guess that's maybe another question that you have as scanned through the list you sent earlier. But I think part of the adjustment was this time we had an impact on the students themselves too. So at the same time, that the students had more research activities that they could do. At the same time, they had the distress, and it's a difficult situation for graduate students, especially some of those that are might have family members that they worry about, etc. So I think that was kind of another aspect that I don't say it was challenging, but I will have to constantly remind myself to be cognizant about that. Right? We have ongoing research. Now there is COVID research, so the level of our research activity increases. Then the students' ability to concentrate decreases. At the same time, since we have these projects, there are expectations not expectations, but we have been one key part of my research team's activities is working with stakeholders. So our stakeholders in the city and county and the state learned about our COVID projects and then reached out to us to see how our results could help them. So as a public research university, we wanted to help them. So this balance of high research activity, higher, what would be the right word, not expectation, higher, I felt obligation to give back to the community, work with them because, we are using the taxpayers' money for research. We want to give back as soon as possible so that we can help them right now. But at the same time, myself had 10% bandwidth with the toddler at home, no daycare support. My grad students, those who had little kids in the same boat, even the ones, without kids, the stress and, the just emotional and this feeling of like isolated that make, it could have well-being impact. And kind of balancing this, being cognizant of students and research team, and at the same time try to minimize the disruptions to the previous ongoing projects and the new project on COVID, and then the obligation or responsibility to give back to community and make the results availability. That was kind of what I was struggling a lot, and I don't think I did a good job. Hopefully 1 year from now, I'm able to sit down and reflect and learn how I could have done it better. But I think that was the main kind of challenge, in dealing with kind of COVID research and ongoing research, and the impacts that the students experience, the community, etc.
Mm-hmm. With I'll say that there are some themes that maybe we expected to hear from different people that we interview, right? That you're simultaneously faced with a pandemic while you're trying to study it, or your students are. One of the themes that has started to emerge when I've talked to people is this other balancing act that you're talking about, and this. So you've got your academic research that you've been, sponsored to do. You're real excited about. You want to do it, and then your, city level, state level people reach out and they want your help. And so then you've got this societal obligation to help, and then anyway, finding that balance. I've heard that from a few people now.
Absolutely, and I'm very interested in learning how different people did that, and was there a way that you could do it better? I know myself that I could probably have done it much better, but it's a learning experience, I guess.
So I think that you've answered this question, so I'll just ask it, and if you have anything you want to add, what do you anticipate to be or are the primary challenges associated with conducting the research? Would you just say dealing with all of those moving parts at once and simultaneous stressors? Okay.
Yes, simultaneous stresses. I would say, if you look at the research activity level, the planned research activity level goes higher, but at the same time, the capacity to do that goes lower, but at the same time, the urgency to do that goes higher. So, there is an urgency to constantly, for example, communicate changing mobility patterns with the state agencies, with county agencies, based on the research that we do. And that requires an increased level of research activity, but at the same time, the capacity, both from the PI perspective, graduate students' perspective, goes down. And I think it was just balancing this at different points in time. We have times that 3 of my students, for example, asked, can we have some break because we feel that we are kind of overwhelmed with this emotional, pressure from COVID-19 and everything we hear from the news. And I said, yeah, just take time off until you feel like you're ready to go out for a walk, play basketball, things like that. So I kind of balancing all that. And during the same week, we had promised one of our stakeholders that, hey, we get you these charts so that you can look at them and hopefully help your planning. And it's okay, now the students who want to do that want to take some break, which I approved, and then how we do it. So all this balancing, I think, over time was unique. During Harvey happened in Houston. I live in Houston, so I was living the impacts while doing the research. But the balancing, the extent of balancing was not the same level. The pandemic situation has stretched it a lot.
It sounds like, with what you've described as your research method, it sounds like all of these activities maybe take place online. Do you have any field work or, okay, and then you've mentioned corresponding with stakeholders before and, of course, your research team. I guess how much of that, normally would you be meeting in person with each other, and especially, of course, you and your students do, but what about with the stakeholders? Did you ever have kind of regular in-person meetings? Did they get disrupted?
Yes, we had regular in-person meetings at least twice a year. That was disrupted for sure. And I think the priorities changed. So, for example, the stakeholders that we worked with on our harvest study, then they became more kind of the stakeholders in terms of, hey, we are hurricane season, I've had pandemic. Could you help us with your data on, how to plan better? And then basically, and it wasn't part of the scope of any of our ongoing projects, but it created the synergy and said that, yeah, we think we can do it. Let's see what we can do for you. So, but yeah, that interrupted, and all of the meetings have been online. But one of the things that helped was, we didn't need to do field work, which could have made it, more disruptive, or at least our field work for Harvey had been completed. So we didn't need to do any organizational interviews or anything. So that was that kind of eliminated any disruptions in that regards.
What's the duration of your COVID-19 project?
The NSF Rapid Grant is 1 year, but based on the results we got, we think that this could go lead to additional projects that help investigate the phenomena that we scratched the surface with the Rapid project, but the current project is 1 year duration.
And you've mentioned students, but do you have any other collaborators on the project?
Not directly on this project. This project was kind of a single PI, but the Harvey project involved collaborations, and then other collaborators also do COVID-related research. So that led to collaboration on COVID as well. So, for example, on the machine learning, deep learning models, one of my previous collaborators on one of my Rapid projects from Harvey, we used some deep learning, machine learning on that project, and then now we are collaborating on the models for COVID. So yeah, that I think those collaborations help. Previous collaborations help to have the familiarity with the work and the process to work together smoothly. I don't think I would have been able to start a new collaboration with a new PI, just for COVID. I think, especially because we are doing social distancing. I think the previous collaboration and relationship was helpful.
How did you get connected with these collaborators that you've got? You already knew them.
Mm-hmm.
Were y'all just kind of already having regular meetings, or they saw that you got a Rapid funded, or how did that happen?
I think there are two mediums. One is some of the collaborators, we had ongoing meetings for ongoing projects. So, and then when the pandemic happened, the discussions basically led to, hey, these are other activities we can extend our collaboration. But also, university had regular meetings that bring researchers from different colleges and departments together to identify synergies among different researchers who work on COVID-19 to kind of help with self-organized collaboration.
That's great. Are you familiar with NERI Converge, the Converge facility? Yeah.
Yes.
Did it play any role in facilitating your current research?
The COVID research? I would say not directly, but I think indirectly there were certain webinars. One of them was on social vulnerability that I was able to use for the new students who were recruited during the summer to work on a COVID project. So the material and resources that the Converge facility provided was very helpful, because then, especially during the social distancing, I was able to provide those resources to new students so that they could become part of their training, which I think was very helpful because it helped them with getting familiar with the concepts and the topics that was part of this research.
We've got 2 more questions left, and so it kind of switches gear a little bit. So much like everyone else, and you've talked about this a little bit over the past hour, but your day-to-day life has also been affected by the pandemic. What are some of the changes to your personal life that are impacting your professional life or research, and in what ways?
In many ways, I guess, probably you've heard it many, many times from previous people. It's just a matter, that it's not normal anymore, especially, having a kid, no daycare, just, trying to balance the job activities and this thing that people say, are we working from home or living at work, right? I think this is, the balance that I don't think we can achieve. It, for me, it changes every day. So some days, and you saw an example of it. Some days I have to cancel meetings last minute because things come up for my wife meetings that I need to watch the kid or vice versa. So I think, that's basically the personal life, family concerns, being kind of emotionally distressed. For example, that's more of a personal one too, rather than, interview comment. My mom is fighting with cancer, so this has been mental distress all the time for me. What if she gets COVID? So, and she's back in my country. She's back in Tehran, and every day as I wake up, I have to talk to her. Just and this mental distress and the subsequent effect it has is just another example of and I'm sure everybody has different but similar, points of distress. Somebody worries about their significant other, somebody worries about older parents, somebody worries about, kids, different, and, it's just an example of the emotional distress that this imposes that reduces the ability to be effective, among other things that are kind of just change, just being able to, change your working hours so that you can work during the kid's nap time or stay longer awake at night to catch up with work, just additional meetings, and then all these. I'm sure, if you, I don't know how many people you will interview, I think, but I guess, this will emerge over and over again.
Definitely. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. I definitely hope for the best, and I can imagine what a wait and just the fear with that. How have you been coping?
Well, I guess I'm just one thing that helped with our COVID research is that I'm just trying to remind myself I have to stay focused and positive so that I can be impactful. And so, every day that I lose concentration or focus and I'm not able to, do the research we do, probably we might not produce the results that could make a small difference. So that I have to keep reminding myself on that. So that helps, and that kind of provides some positive energy that helps like staying focused and say, the data that we provide could potentially help, let's say, Harris County Public Health Department in their planning for hurricane, if a hurricane happens during pandemic. So, and that could be impactful for people. So that kind of keeps us, cope with the situation.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fantastic, and I'm glad to hear that because I totally agree with how important your work is and the potential impact it can have.
Thanks.
To date, what have been the consequences, if any, of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations following the killing of George Floyd on you and your research?
Well, I think, personally, I think it made me more, it made me think that I need to be more active. The matter of fact that I have, certain beliefs that, about the importance of social justice and social equality doesn't matter if they don't turn into action. So that was one thing that I hope that I could do. In terms of research, my work had a strong focus on social inequalities, and basically we have a strong equitable resilience research trust in my lab, which was kind of basically supported from the Carrier Project. And basically that kind of reinforced what we do, and that kind of trickled into the work that we do on COVID. At the beginning, in the scope of work, we didn't explicitly include, examination of social equality issues in our COVID project, but that event led us to kind of remind ourselves that we have to expand our work and don't limit it to only one project or one study. We can expand it to basically show more scientific evidence about the underlying inequalities and the effects that it has in the society. So, and I think it has a similar kind of message or effect on my students. So, yeah.
It's fantastic. Okay, Ali, well, that was the last question. And we're 5 minutes to the end of the hour, so thanks so much for your time.
Sure.
I really appreciate it, and I'm thinking about you and hoping that things go well, certainly with your mom and your family,
Thanks.
and also with the research. And I'll check back in with you over the next 12 months. If you have anything you want to send me that comes out with the work, that would be
Sure.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
And then once I get this transcribed, I'll send it your way, like I said, so that you can double check everything that you said.
Fantastic.
It
Fantastic.
matches what you want it to say.
I'm so looking forward to reading the book and anything that comes out of this research.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, same here.
Thanks for doing this. I think it's such an important work. I think it's how we do research and how we deal with this. I had this conversation with Lori, just maybe 1 minute comment, not conversation, email communication, that one of the things balancing the emotional distress while doing disaster research. The first time I went to Nepal, it took me 3 days just to get back to doing the research because I was so emotionally overwhelmed seeing what people are going through. So, and it happened again during Harvey, it happened again during COVID. I don't think that's a thing that we can totally overcome, but I think just learning this and how different researchers are doing that. I think, if you find through interviews with people that how people, cope with these emotional distresses that involves with disaster research too, and then what the strategies or what practices they adopt, I think that would be very helpful, at least for me.
Well, same here for me too. So yeah, well, thank you for being open to share, what you do with us too, so we can learn from you. And yes, we'll definitely.
My pleasure.
Get back.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, and have a great rest of your week.
You too. Nice talking with you. Take care.
Bye.